Welcome back to Kentucky Sports Television. Joining us now on Skype is probably our smartest guest, but most certainly our best-looking guest, Buzz Baker. How are you, man?
Well, you didn't have to do all that. You already had me on the show, but I appreciate it.
Kentucky, of course, is all season long kind of been up and down, up and down. Ended the season on a high Saturday by beating Florida. As they head into the SEC tournament, what do you make of this team right now as they get ready to head into the tournament?
Well, let me say this, Teej. I was at the women's tournament this weekend, and I did an interview with Commissioner Slive on Friday night, and we were talking about it, and he's the only person besides my mom that calls me David. He said, David, I think this is one of those years where we've just got a big middle, and I think he's right. I mean, I think for most of the year, Florida has been the best team, although, as I tried to say to Oscar Combs one night on a pregame show, I don't think it's like, they're the Miami Heat or anything like that, but for most of the year, they have clearly been better. Everybody else, I think you can kind of shake them up. And, on any given night, especially in a one-game deal like this tournament, I don't think you could be surprised for any of maybe about 8 teams in this league to beat one another. So I would certainly put Kentucky in that category. If they play well, they're good enough to compete with anybody. They're good enough to go down and win this SEC tournament. They're good enough to make a run in the NCAA tournament. But by the same token, if they don't, they're average enough in certain areas where they could get bounced in the first game.
If they're going to make that run, what is it the one thing that's kind of held them back this season in your eyes? What do they need to really continue to do or maybe fix as they go into this tournament?
I just think it's toughness and attitude. I really do. I don't think it's execution. I don't think it's shot selection. I don't think it's understanding the offense. I don't think it's continuity. I don't think it's any of those things that you normally talk about. I think it's just a question of are they tough enough? At some point in time, do you get tired enough of somebody kicking you in the gut? Or it's like we used to have this. This is much older than you, Teach, but back when we played football, some wise guy would always come around and would start hitting helmets with one of those chin straps. And the metal buckle on there, it would be so loud it would just about cause your head to explode. And, you might laugh it off or something. But then, invariably, there was a time when one day you just got tired of it and somebody got their tail beat. And so that's the question for this Kentucky basketball team. At what point in time do they decide that's going to happen? And not only as a team, but when do individuals decide that? And when do they get an attitude about it? People always talked about DeMarcus Cousins being over the top. Oh, my gosh. Give me DeMarcus Cousins' attitude every day of the week as opposed to guys that you have to motivate to have that kind of fire in their belly.
Does that have to come from within? I mean, Cal seems like this year he's done everything he can. He's called guys out in the media. He's benched players. And at times they've seemed to have responded, and at times they haven't. Is that a mentality that you're just born with, that these guys either have to just prove themselves on the court, or can Coach Cal kind of instill that in them?
I think it's a combination of both, Teej. I was talking to Anthony Grant before that Alabama game on Saturday, and I've talked to a number of coaches in the league this year. And they're all very much talking about a similar sort of thing that Cal has been talking about. And, it's not that they're bad kids. These are great kids. But if you look at Kentucky, for instance, you talk about the bench, there's not enough depth there for Cal to be able to use the bench as an effective motivator. And then part of it is societal. I've always said I never wanted to be one of these guys, but it's and I've got kids that are approaching this age now, in junior high and high school, and they grow up in that, you did it too. I mean, you grew up in the Nintendo age, and you get beat, you just hit the reset button. You're not playing well, you just hit the reset button. And then at AAU level, at the top level that these guys play, they get beat at 10 o'clock. It doesn't sting quite so bad because they come back and play again at 2, and then they play at 6 at night.
Do you think, when you're looking at this bracket, Kentucky will play the winner of Arkansas, Vanderbilt, and then if they win, most likely either Missouri or Ole Miss. I think most people looking at this say that Kentucky got a pretty good draw based on the other teams that are in there. It could be a matchup problem. Of those 4, Arkansas, Vanderbilt, or Ole Miss or Missouri, is there one of those 4 that you think Kentucky would be better off avoiding and probably not one to play above the other 3?
It just depends on which Kentucky team comes out. I mean, they obviously got spanked by Arkansas. They had to go down to the wire on their home court against Ole Miss. Against Missouri rather. They don't beat Ole Miss. unless Nerlens Noel, who's not available right now, has one of the greatest stretches in SEC regular game history with 4 fouls in terms of all those shots that he blocked. And Vandy played him to the wire both times they played. So, I don't think there's anything easy for this Kentucky team this year.
And switching gears a little bit, the women's basketball team, of course, we'll find out where they're headed shortly. For fans that have not seen Matthew Mitchell's club this year, another great season, lost in the SEC championship game. How good is this team? Is this a legitimate title contender in women's college basketball?
They are. They have a tendency to run into some bad matchups. They're 7th in the country, and they played awfully well. I do think in the women's game this year, and I hate to say this now, but it looks like the way that Duke is playing since the big kid has come back, Kelly, that they might be head and shoulders above everybody else on the men's side. And I think all season long, Baylor has been head and shoulders above everybody on the women's side. But I think Kentucky is one of those teams. I think Louisville's another one of those teams, on the women's side, that they have played consistently well throughout the year. It's tough to beat anybody, that old saying, 3 times in a season. They ran up against Texas A&M in the championship game of the SEC tournament, and A&M, who won the national championship just back in 2011, had lost 2 close games to Kentucky. So, yeah, I think this is a year where, depending on the draw, and if they just don't have some awful shooting night, they had a tough shooting night second half on Sunday night. Credit A&M was part of that, though. They've got a chance to make that Final Four run.
All right, before we let you go, put on your prognostication hat. What is Kentucky? Where do you see them in the SEC tournament? How many games do you think they'll win? And coming out of it, will they be that team that you talked about before that everybody fears?
Well, I think they win and they get to the semifinals. After that, I'm just not sure, because the one thing about this team that has been the most consistent has been the fact that they've had no consistency. So let's say they come out on Friday night and play the way we think and hope that they can play, and they get a victory. Can they back that up on Saturday afternoon? They've not done that to this point in time. But I go back to this, and again, I defer to the gentleman from Hazard and Oscar. There's nobody down there that strikes just awful fear in you. I mean, anybody can get through. I would not be surprised if this is one of those SEC tournaments where somebody just comes out of the woodwork and wins the thing. But I hope if Kentucky can put those efforts together back to back, then I think they've got a real chance at being able to make a real run.
All right, Buzz Baker from Lexington, thank you very much for joining us. Always appreciate talking with you.
Teej, you're welcome. Good being with you.